through. So we know that a lot of things have changed since March, especially just around your daily routines. You know, we talk a lot about the fitness and nutrition and recovery being, you know, based on your habits and how consistent you can be, and that's obviously been challenged. There's going to be a lot of permanent changes going forward, even as things reopen and whatnot. But we just wanted to answer some questions that we've been getting in terms of like, how can I continue making progress despite the obstacles, despite new responsibilities I might have, new routines and schedules and whatnot. And it's just good for us to check in with all of the members so that we're all on the same page and we're helping you out in any way that we can. So we've gotten a couple questions this week, and we're just gonna kind of go through them and we'll kind of take turns answering. If you do have any questions that come up while we're talking, you can ask them with the chat button there at the bottom, and we'll just kind of monitor that. And if anything comes up, we'll address it. All right. So to start, we got a question from Chris Fang about nutrition around training. So I think that a lot of people are now like making a lot of their own meals, right? Schedules are changing. Your eating schedule's probably changed quite a bit now that everybody's working from home. So he asked, is there a general rule for how much time to wait after eating before working out? Or conversely, is there an optimal amount of time to give yourself before a workout to eat? So I'm gonna let Jay take this one. And
he's in the Bahamas apparently.
Well, it's so as to I give you the illusion that I'm in the Bahamas, but when the fireworks start going off, you'll know exactly where I am. So it was a really good question, Chris, and I think it's probably one that a lot of people have asked. So there are some general rules that we'll go by. So just to reiterate, the question was, and I'll just read it real quickly. Is there a general rule of how much time to wait before eating, before working out, and conversely, is there an optimal amount of time to give yourself before a workout to eat or after a workout to eat? So yeah, there's a couple of general rules of thumb that we go by. And basically it also depends on, there's a lot of things obviously, but it depends on what time of day that you're training. But if you're getting up first thing in the morning, we would always advise that you eat something before you train, just to have something in your stomach. And the reason is that, I mean, everybody's probably been there. Everybody's probably been to a training session on an empty stomach and then been like feeling woozy 3/4 of the way through and thought, do you know what, I have to sit down. Do you know what, Joe, I can't ride the assault bike today, whatever it might be. So we want to have some carbohydrates most likely in our system. And the reason we say carbohydrates are the preferred fuel for the body, right? They're the preferred energy fuel for the body. So when we say carbohydrates first thing in the morning, we're looking for something that's readily or easily digestible. So something like a banana, or some form of fruit. Obviously anything else you can get carbohydrates into, but something that's easily absorbed into the bloodstream that you can use straight away. And that's kind of the rule for most pre-workout things, and something that doesn't cause you a ton of digestive distress. So a lot of the time people will have like some form of like morning shake, which will be, you know, fruit and some protein powder, almond milk, and that seems to sit pretty well with people. One of the things you probably want to avoid doing is eating things that are digestively demanding. So if you're going to go and sit there and eat, you know, a giant scoop of peanut butter, fat is inherently the hardest thing for our body to break down. So good for satiety later on in the evening, but first thing in the morning, as much as it's, you know, very full of energy, you know, because it's fat, because it's protein, because it's fat, because it's some protein, because it's peanut butter, we probably want to avoid, most people want to avoid eating that first thing in the morning because it is so digestively demanding. So I usually would go for something like a yogurt, another funny word, yogurt and a banana first thing in the morning, easily digestible, got some protein, got some carbohydrates, protein to be able to sustain muscle mass, carbohydrates to be able to support energy output, and pretty digestively, you know, pretty sound, not going to cause you too many issues. So that's like one example of how you could do it. And the same thing for pretty much if you're working out in the middle of the day. If you're working out in the middle of the day and you kind of already had a heavier, more digestively straining breakfast, so like maybe you've had toast and eggs and some higher fat stuff earlier on in the day, you know, you've probably had some time to digest that. So as a rule of thumb, probably about an hour if you're getting something that's a little bit more digestively demanding. But if you can get some form of liquid pre-workout, like a liquid carbohydrates pre-workout, and that could be anything from a Gatorade to, yes, I am promoting Gatorade, anything from a Gatorade to, you know, as I said, like a morning breakfast shake with some almond milk and a banana or something. And then in terms of post-workout, we want to try and have a similar balance again. What we want to make sure is post-workout that we get a good mixture of carbohydrates and a good mixture of protein in there. So this seems a little arbitrary, but the reason I'm saying it in percentages is obviously because everybody on this call right now is going to have different calorie needs. So we want to try and get in about 20 to 30% of our protein needs post-workout. We want to try and get in about 20 to 30% of our carbohydrate needs in post-workout. The reason is for that, protein is great for being able to, number one, satiate us until our next meal, so we don't feel absolutely starving. If we train first thing in the morning, we're not like absolutely hankering for lunch. Protein also is going to be the building blocks of muscle, so we can do a little bit more and actually save some of the work that we've just done. You know, that some of that muscle breakdown that we've just got in the gym, protein is going to help us rebuild that. And then in terms of carbohydrates, we want to be able to bring our blood sugar level back up to a normal level so that we're not like worn out post-workout. And we're also very sensitive to carbohydrates post-workout as well, because our bloodstream is running, you know, and double time. We're very sensitive, like our body is very sensitive to absorbing carbohydrates at that point. So again, you want to try and get in maybe 20, 30% of your daily carbohydrates and protein post-workout. And it's really a comfort thing. I know Janet has asked this in the past, like she doesn't feel super hungry post-workout. So can she push one of her meals to later on? The answer is yes. You just don't want to push it so far that it gives you digestive issues late, or just digestive difficulties later on in the day. If you're going to bed and you're still trying to, you know, digest tons of food in your system, you're not going to sleep well. And obviously that is a big portion of it as well. So hopefully that gives some context in general, as a general rule of thumb to the questions. And I'm sure if we open this up, we will say, like, you know, I know Matt can eat a pound of beef and rice pre-workout and he's actually fine. If I was to eat a pound of beef and rice pre-workout, and I think probably most other people, I'd probably throw up mid-workout, but it would not go well for me. So, you know, I think we've all got different versions of that. Does that make sense, Chris? Do you want clarity on that question? And if so, something that Joe might have mentioned, sorry, but if you have any follow-up questions to any of this, like if you want to get more clarity and more context around something that one of us says, you know, shoot it in the chat box and we'll try and answer it farther on later on.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Chris, if you have a question though, go ahead and ask it. So, because that was your specific one.
No, that answered it. I was kind of curious because like right now I'm doing a midday workout, kind of 1 o'clock. So I was doing lunch around 12 o'clock and it was usually like peanut butter and jelly, actually. That's been my go-to. It seems to give me enough sugar to like get through, and peanut butter, I'm sort of satiated now for a couple hours.
Yeah.
So, but it's not like so filling that I feel like you said, I ate a pound of beef or whatever.
Yeah. Something that's,
I don't know what that is like, but I'm sure
I'll tell
Not
you.
many of us do. It's a Mac Crust vessel.
Well,
Not a full pound.
I would say, like, my go-to is a peanut butter sandwich. I try to get it close to an hour before my workout. If I eat it too close, I don't feel too well. But Chris, I was glad you asked that question because you also usually would be training at like 7 p.m. or late, right? So, you know, not to be like too simplistic, but your whole day is going to matter a little bit more than somebody who's training at 6 a.m., right? You've got to make sure that you're eating and hydration is everything is good throughout the day. If you skip lunch, so if you eat at like 8 in the morning and then don't eat anything else until 6 o'clock right before your workout, you're not drinking water and stuff, you're probably not going to be very well fueled. Not to mention you've just gone through a whole day of work and whatever else. So like Jay was saying, the time of day that you're training does depend. And then, you know, some of it is anecdotal, but
yeah, you want to try and get, my neighbor's decided he's going to start cutting his grass. You want to try and get some, again, I think digestively, it pick something that works for you. And it just, you know, carbohydrates can be rice, can be Gatorade, can be bananas, doesn't matter. But what do you feel like is kind of the most enjoyable thing for you to eat at the start of the day? The thing that's going to be able to absorb into your bloodstream quickly enough to actually be usable pre-workout. And that isn't going to give you a ton of digestive distress. So I know that if I eat peanut butter pre-workout, pretty much peanut butter for the following workout, not nice, not great, and that's pretty much the answer, right? But so personally, if I train first thing in the morning, first thing in the morning, if I'm training by 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, I'll still have my breakfast, but I'll have it in a shake form because there's no digestive distress because it's liquid. My body doesn't have to break it down, right? And it's easily digested into my bloodstream so to be able to use this energy pretty quickly. If I'm training at 10 o'clock, but I'm starting work at 7, I'll probably have the more solid form of that. So I'll just have yogurt and fruit and that might satiate me for a little bit longer. Does that make sense? So there's a few check boxes to kind of go through there as you go through it. Mm-hmm.
There's no follow-ups to that. That's actually a very good segue, I think, into another question that Chris had.
Jay has a follow-up.
So there was a follow-up. Aaron sent me a message. You can just do just make sure that we do the group. Sorry, Aaron, because it's just come to me privately. Aaron asked, is there like an ideal time frame after a morning workout to eat? Because like Aaron said, like you said, I can't eat right after, otherwise I'll feel like I'm going to throw up. I mean, yes, we've discussed this as kind of a running joke. I think Matt's smiling because there is something known as the anabolic window. Now, the anabolic window is ultimately when our body is most primed to reabsorb nutrients post-training. All right. So let's be frank here. If it doesn't matter that much. Nutrient timing doesn't matter as much as we give it credit for, right? Nutrient timing is absolutely important when we've got a lot of other things matched up, but the type of food that we're eating, so the macronutrients, what it's made of, carbohydrates, fats, proteins, what that food item is built of, and ultimately the total calories that we're consuming are the main factors in kind of overall nutritional health, right? The types of the amount of calories, energy balance in and out, is it going to satiate us, that kind of stuff, and then what the food is made up of, carbohydrates, fat, or protein. So they're the main things. So in terms of timing, yeah, if you're looking to be, go to the next level, which is nutrient timing, then yes, within an hour is when your body is most primed to reabsorb nutrients post-training, right? Post-stress, it's looking for nutrients to say, hey, let's start the recovery process quickly, right? If that makes sense. But if you end up eating an hour and a half outside of that, or you end up eating 3 hours outside of that, the most degrading factor there is that you're just going to be hungry as fuck at that time, right? You're just going to be hungry because you will have only eaten 4 hours ago. You'll have eaten 4 hours ago, an hour before your training, probably, or maybe 5 hours ago. So you want to try and eat for satiety is probably the number one thing. So in terms of nutrient timing, it's less important than maybe we give it credit for. There is obviously a good amount of science that goes into it, but it's a very small piece of the picture versus overall calories consumed and the type of food that we're eating.
I would also say that depending on similar to what you can eat before you work out, like the concept of drinking my calories before working out actually makes me a little nauseous because I would get ill, like doing something after drinking it. So I would say if you're someone who has trouble eating after you work out, you should play with what you're eating and see if there's something that you can easily digest and maybe doesn't make you feel as ill, because I definitely think there are some things that work and some things that don't. Like right after a training session, because I usually train mid-morning, I don't want a full lunch, but I can usually handle a yogurt or something just to get some calories in, because the other thing you want to be careful of is not running into a situation where you're not eating after you work out, but then you're not eating for 6 hours because you don't eat right after you work out, and then you go to work and then you're stuck in meetings, and then it's 2 p.m. by the time you're eating after your 8 a.m. workout. So there's definitely things that you can try that may not sit in your stomach as poorly.
You can also sip a protein shake. Don't have to guzzle it. Just in general, you can sip it. It's not you, Jess, obviously, but people, we can. No, no. But I'm saying we don't have to it doesn't a meal
You're knocking them back.
If it's liquid, yeah, exactly, just shaking it down. But if it's liquid form, the beauty of the fact that it's liquid form is that it becomes portable, right? You can take it with you, and you can decide, hey, I'm gonna have a mouthful of it now, and I'll put it in my lunch bag or whatever it is, and I can take it with me later on, and that means that it's a little bit more of a portable meal. So again, it's trying to find the things that best fit your lifestyle as well. But as I said, the first two kind of layers of the pyramid are calories and then what those foods that you're eating are made out of. And then after that, it's a little bit more debatable, a little bit more personalizable to each individual, right?
What's up next, Joe?
Oh, it's all good. Okay. So, kind of going on timing and making your schedule around training or whatnot. Chris also asked, should you work out at about the same time each day? I'll take a stab at that. So there is a lot to be said about having some predictability around your schedule so that when you train at a similar time each day, just tying this back to the nutrition, like it's probably going to be easier for you to design your daily eating habits around, say, the same training time or a similar training time. So there's not a lot of variability there. Also, there is an element of predictability that you'll have. So if you're training at 7 p.m. and one day, and then you're training at 8 a.m. the next day, and then 3 p.m. the day after that, there's a lot of variability there. And I'd be surprised if you could put out really consistent hard effort with every workout. If there's that predictability and you can find a time that works well for you, the more consistent intensity and the more consistent effort you can bring to your workouts, the better. So I think, like Chris, you had mentioned that there has been a way of thinking that I need to like shock my body. That doesn't really apply here. Too much confusion is probably just going to limit your ability to perform well in all of your training sessions.
I think there's also something to, like, if you're training really hard at night and then the next morning you're trying to train, there's definitely a different effect on your body if you're only got 12 hours between your recovery time and 18 hours or something like that, depending on how hard you're working out. But
we talk a lot at the gym about creating the right habits around whether it's training or recovery or nutrition or whatever. I think that the less predictable the schedule becomes, the more difficult it is to be consistent with good habits. Yeah. For me, especially, I try to train at similar times. A lot of that has to do with, when I'm working. So schedules changed quite a bit when we all started working from home. So my training time had to change, and that took like a little bit of time to figure out as well. So you've all been training from home for 12 plus weeks now. You probably should have a decent idea of like, is the time that I'm choosing to train working for me? Am I able to put out good effort, or is it not, right? And then you can kind of make a more informed decision on what time is best for you to train. You can get the most out of it. That also works with your new routine, your new schedule.
I will kind of add on to that in addition, though. I 100% agree with everything Joe and Jess said. But try not to let your consistency of training time be a deterrent if you miss that time. So, for example, you work out at like consistently 10 a.m. 3 days a week. If something pops up one day and you're not able to hit that 10 a.m. time, don't let that be a deterrent from being able to work out a little bit later on in the day. Like still do something.
yeah, that's a good point.
One thing I want to add is, for me, the most important thing of like consistent timing is my energy level.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like a certain time of day where I know I'm like really awake. So I'm not like trying to just wake myself up. I don't feel groggy. I feel like pretty good to go. I feel pretty primed to be able to like get my mindset in a space where I can really put in as much effort as I can. So that's more of where I'm coming from when I'm training at like similar times of day. So that could also be a thing to guide you as well, to figure out like, oh, am I a morning person, an afternoon person, evening person? You can just go off of like, okay, which time of day do I feel like I have the most energy, that I can put the most in my training, and I won't hate like the idea of doing. So some people might think, oh, 6 a.m., get it out of my day. But if you can't wake up for 6 a.m. or you hate the idea of it, or you're just used to a certain sleep schedule, maybe it's just better for you to choose like some more evening time of day. So yeah, just goes in with like your whole scheduling as well.
Yeah, good point.
That's the thing on top of that, right? Is that like training is one facet. of everything. And training might be the hardest thing for you to control. Like if you've got kids or a really busy work schedule or a hectic travel schedule, like training time, trying to make the same training time every single day might just be a fool's errand, right? Because there's other things that you can spend your time on. There's other things that you can prioritize, right? So just similar to how I just said, like nutrient timing isn't actually that important. Let's focus on some of the other bigger things that are maybe a little easier for us to control. Like Matt said, train whenever you can. If the option is train at a perfect time or not train at all, still train, do something, right? Get some form of movement going. And if getting a consistent training schedule is just not viable for you, there's plenty of other things that we can do. Potentially you can get a consistent sleep schedule, which might be as useful, if not more useful, than the same training time each day, because training for the most part is an hour of our day. So that's 7 hours a week. If we train every single day for an hour, it's 161 other hours that we can do other stuff with. And there's plenty of other things that we can make small incremental changes with outside of that, right? So whether it's quality of the food, whether it's making sure that we get a breakfast, even if we can't train first thing in the morning, whether it's making sure that we get the same consistent sleep and wake time, whatever it might be, the training is one of the facets. And training at the same time is definitely useful. It's definitely, if you can make it happen, there's lots of pros to it. If you can't make it happen, there's a few cons to it, but there's plenty of other things that we can work on as well, right? It's not a zero-sum game in that respect. That makes sense. Cool.
Any questions? Anyone want any clarification there? No? Okay. This next one was from Janet, and her question is, to add reps or to up your weight? How do you decide and gear towards it, and how does it gear towards your goals? So this is kind of like just asking how we progress things, right? So we know that if we're trying to build strength or improve fitness, doing more work gradually over time will help us accomplish that. And then the choice is, right, we can do more repetitions with the same weight. We can increase the amount of weight for similar repetitions. There's a lot of other ways as well. So I think that this is something that is especially evident right now. We've all been training for 12 weeks with about the same weight, right? And maybe a band or two. And it's difficult to change the amount of weight that you have, but you can do more repetitions. If you're getting to the point where you're doing so many repetitions that 3 sets of 30 is like taking you for forever, that's probably not a viable option to just keep adding repetitions. If you've been attending classes, though, you'll notice that we've programmed like rep ranges, and we've also started using, you probably heard all of us coaches say at some point, we were looking for like an 8 out of 10 RPE, which is your rate of perceived exertion. Essentially, we're just trying to find the appropriate level of intensity or the appropriate challenge for you. So what's more important is that you can find that. And, it's depending on your ability to increase weight, or if you can't increase weight, increase repetitions. Or we've also used like tempos. If you're taking the strength class this month, you're holding goblet squats for 10 seconds on the first rep and 10 seconds on the last rep. You know how challenging that is. The weight hasn't changed. You're still only doing 10 reps. But that small variation, changing that variable there with the isometric hold at the beginning and end of the set increases the intensity pretty dramatically. So it's finding those ways that you can just increase the intensity that you're working at, in like a reasonable way.
I think it can sometimes be a tough question too, because as everything in the fitness industry, it's like it also depends, because if you take into consideration, like if you're at home and your next weight up is like so heavy, like you can only get 2 reps with that weight, but you can get like 10 reps with your current weight, it's probably better to stay at the 10 reps, not just do the 2 reps. And then I'd also say, like, again, it's always for us is going to be quality over quantity. So if you are moving up a weight, but your quality just completely goes out the window, we'd rather you be at that lower weight doing much more quality work than at the heavier weight not doing quality. It's kind of, I think it's a little bit of a tough question sometimes, but Joe answered it pretty well. But it depends on if we're talking about at home or in the gym type thing.
And when you're relating it to your goal, like I would also take into account, all the other things that you're doing. If you're already doing like a bunch of endurance work, you probably don't want to be training at super, super high volumes. And then just like 6 days a week, you're training these really high volumes, your endurance is being challenged. Your recovery is probably going to suffer from that. Right. So, it's tough to speak to like specific goals because there are a lot of variables that go into it. But yeah, I think what Jess said makes a lot of sense as well. It's, especially now that we're training from home, we have kind of limited equipment and options. You have to just take into account what makes the most sense. What can I keep good quality with? Is it still effective? Am I just going up just to go up? Because that seems like it should be the progression, or is it actually worthwhile?
My own personal training down here has been a prime example of that, because when I first got down here, I had actually I had stolen everything from the gym, and all I got was not all I got, but what I had taken with me was barbells and then 45-pound plates and 25-pound plates. And when I was deadlifting, I could only jump by my lowest amount I could jump was 50 pounds, right? I know that's like such an extreme thing, but if we talk about my deadlifting, 50 pounds I can handle, but not when I'm like up in the 200s. So it was like I can stay at a lighter weight and do more reps because I can do those quality, or I could jump up, add the 50 pounds and only do like 1-2 reps. And then at that point, it also becomes quality and quantity. So that's why I think that's where I was kind of like going with it, because like the weights I have here are like really obscure. I have a 16 kilo bell and a 32 kilo bell. And then I have a barbell that I can load up, but again, it's in, 90-pound increments or 50-pound increments. So yeah, you just have to try to take that all into account.
It's also the concept of relative intensity, right? So when Joe's mentioned like RPE, like RPE, if you've got a 16 kilo bell and that to you is like, you could do like, I think Jose has like a 28 kilo bell. Now for swings and ballistics and stuff, like he's fine with that, but there's no way in hell he's pressing that over his head. So like the relative intensity for presses with that weight is very high. The relative intensity for single leg work and squats and swings, not that high for him. So he can definitely dial up his volume there because his load is fixed, right? So if we're working with a fixed load, it could potentially be movement pattern dependent. So that's what kind of one extra thing to add, which is like the concept of that relative intensity. So even if you can't go up in load, or you don't always have to go up in load to quote unquote get stronger, right? So the other thing to consider is that every decision, every rep comes at some form of cost. So like Joe mentioned, like if you're already doing a ton of high rep stuff or endurance stuff somewhere else, it's not just muscles, right? It's not just muscles. It's connective tissue. It's your joints. It's all those other things. So if you're already doing a ton of higher volume, like let's say cycling or running or something like that, running specifically because it comes with a little bit more of an impact factor to it. So yeah, as Joe is saying, you probably don't want to add more total volume, but at the same time, you definitely don't want to then just go with an extreme load, do really low volume and start doubling the load, because your connective tissue is not designed to, it's not primed to deal with that extra load, right? So it comes at a cost versus an input versus output cost balance ratio. Does that make sense? Like, so if you've been doing 10 presses with a 12 kilo bell for 8 weeks, and now you want to do 5 presses with a 24 kilo bell, even if you're strength-wise or muscularly capable of doing that and can produce the force muscularly, your connective tissue is not primed necessarily to do that thing, right? To take that initial force factor on. So as a general rule of thumb, we would usually say go up in volume, then go up in load, right? It's like go reps first, then go weight afterwards, because typically the risk factor is just it's a lot lower. There's a risk to go up in reps than it is to jump up in weight, right? Because of that connective tissue, because of the skill capacity, because of the total volume, or the total load spread over the body, like all those things. So in general, it's likely safer, and you're going to get similar results out of going up in volume rep or 2 than by load. Makes sense? It's my additive to that.
Yeah, thumbs up from Janet.
Thumbs up from the Bahamas with a lawnmower.
Is that what that noise is now?
It's stopped now. Now there's just like a blue jay going apeshit in the tree. I thought it was going to be peaceful outside.
Patrick just told me he thought he saw an Oriole during our training session. I said I wasn't going to believe him until he sent a picture. That's a very rare bird to see.
No, we have them down here.
Well, it's still very rare.
Well, I saw one.
Prove it.
Oh, I will. We also have hummingbirds now, which is very exciting. But anyway, we should stick to the training.
I'm talking about
But
birds.
not walk around my parents' house like this, trying to catch the Baltimore Oriole.
So another question that we got was about equipment. So we got this from a few people. What is the best piece of equipment for me to get? And there really is no best piece of equipment, right? Like, there's definitely more effective and more versatile pieces of equipment. We kind of talked about this today earlier, that we train in the gym in a certain way for a reason. You know, all of you have been able to take a kettlebell home essentially and train for 12 weeks at a pretty high level with very little equipment. You know, if you were using machines all the time and you were using all kinds of crazy modalities and you couldn't fit in your house, it'd be pretty tough to be able to keep that going. So, you know, we obviously believe that the kettlebell is a really versatile tool. But, you know, I said this earlier, in my opinion, it's got to be something that you're going to actually use. So it's got to be something that's like usable. There's a lot of stuff out there that you're going to see on Instagram and whatnot. It's like just some crazy contraption with some jacked, you know, man or woman on there. And it's like, I got ripped using this bow and arrow thing. You know, it's like, yeah, well, we'll see. Because you're going to probably end up buying it. You might use it a few times, then it goes away in the closet and never comes out again. So just, you know, whatever you decide to use, make sure that it's something that's versatile that you can actually use and you're actually going to stick with using.
I do think that, like, obviously we would all say the kettlebell, but I do think the TRX, if you have the means to hang them, are very helpful. The clients of mine who have gotten a TRX over the 12 weeks, it's a little bit like, okay, there's a lot we can do. But the caveat is you have to be able to hang it somewhere, because it's useful off your door, but not as useful as if you can hang it. So you got to live in a certain type of house to be able to do that, or know somebody who can like jerry rig something. Yes, you could also, as Jay just said, you could put an assault bike in your kitchen. Some people do that. Again, and it's also going to depend on space, and it's going to depend on, you know, how much you want to spend and how much, you know, what you want to do. You know, it's been interesting to see what us as coaches, because we waited for everybody to take kettlebells, and then we were kind of like, and go take whatever else is left. And, you know, we were like taking weight vests, we were taking anything we could. But yeah, I would say kettlebell, bands, and maybe a TRX, and you'd be pretty good to go. And please don't fall for the Instagram ads. I know the people are really good looking, but that stuff is ridiculous. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Because I'll tell you, none of those people got shredded using that piece of equipment. They got shredded using kettlebells and TRXs and bands. So
the other thing to say as well is, right, it's like, you know, the kettlebell is useful for you all to take home because you were already skilled in using the kettlebell, and it's it was relatively low tech to learn in the first place. So there was no skill ramp that you had to climb up to be able to actually, you know, get the most out of a kettlebell. And this similar thing, you know, like dumbbells are pretty easy to use as well. There's a weight with a handle on it. Like how much can we mess this up? Now that's not a challenge, but how much can you mess up a dumbbell? You know, so if you can get a ton of work done with really simple stuff, so yeah, you know, dumbbells are another fine option. If you want to spend the money and get like a variable pair of dumbbells, they'll probably last you a lifetime. But you know, you can do a ton of stuff with dumbbells, and the fact that it comes in multiple, I guess one of the limiting factors of a kettlebell is that it's limited in weight. Like it's fixed weight, unless you get that one that Alex mentioned a few weeks ago, which you can like fill up with sand or something. But it's a fixed weight, so you're limited to the types of lifts that you can do with them, or the volume of reps that you can do with them as your variable. So another option is obviously dumbbells. They'll probably run you a few $100s, obviously, but super low tech to actually be able to just pick it up and start doing stuff with. And that really is That's the answer, is that something that it isn't going to take you a year to learn how to use effectively. Like barbell, super useful if you know how to use a barbell.
Yeah.
Kettlebells, there's so many people around this city who have got a kettlebell and they're like, what the fuck do I do with this? I have no idea to use it. Last time I used this, I propped a door open with, but it would be super useful in the hands of somebody skilled, like yourselves.
Like,
Correct.
because I will say, as somebody who's not a runner and never will be, I had big dreams for quarantine. I was like, it's gonna happen. This is the year. I'm gonna enjoy it. No, it's terrible. Everything hurts. Anyway, so you can't get the cardio effect with a dumbbell that you can with a kettlebell. Because I've had quite a few clients say to me, I want to increase my cardio, but I don't want to run. And I'm like, just do swings and then figure out how to enjoy running.
Or walking up hills, or doing walking lunges up hills. Don't have to run.
This is true.
Find things that are very difficult to do.
Just,
Yeah.
Yep.
Walk in sand. Have children. Lots of different things, lots of very difficult things.
You meant to chase
Just looking directly at Michelle when I said had children, she was like,
the children around. Also, Michelle's been holding a knife, which I'm like terrified what's going on over there.
fuck away from me.
Oh, she's cutting carrots. Good.
Yeah, I think that this is just like, this is applies to a lot of things. If you spend your time worrying about the things that you can't do, like all of the exercises and all the equipment that you can't use, that's just a waste of time. There's a lot of things that you can do. If you worry about what you can do and what's at your disposal, then it's a little easier just, to create workouts that are effective. I mean, pretty much everybody has like literally a kettlebell and a band, if that. And I've said it a bunch of times, I'm totally impressed with how successful like everybody that I've seen has been working out in their living room, a couple times a week. So there's still a lot that you can do. Training, it's a business, there's a lot of like really fancy stuff that's out there getting pushed around. And it's important that you don't kind of fall prey to that just for the novelty of it.
Alex said 100 swings each day. Will that do it? That's definitely a good place to start. Not a bad thing to do. I think Jerry Lynn was big on that, was her 100 swings a day. Yeah, I knew that's where it came from. Yeah. Listen, it's not a bad thing to do. I would say you should do other things with that, but.
100 swings takes 5 minutes. If you do them all at once. It's very difficult, don't get me wrong. It depends on what you're swinging and how intensely you're doing it, or how quickly you can do 100 swings. But
what I was trying to say when I can't type on
That's
the
okay.
screen, the current Metcon thing, we do 100 swings.
Yeah.
Right, like within that first few, in the first part of the routine.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that hard.
Nope. Yeah, 100 swings is like it's a simple way to just get it in.
Yeah, granted, we don't do Metcon every day, but still.
You don't need to though.
not that hard, he said, Matt. Remember that.
Yeah.
Well, I will no longer try to type anything.
Okay.
I had also heard somebody say like, at the very beginning of quarantine that like and it's nice to have an hour to set aside to work out and get everything done in that hour of dedicated work. But if your schedule is like wacky, you can knock out like 10 push-ups here and there, and you will get better at push-ups. You can knock out 10 minutes of swings here and there, do 10 minutes of swings at lunch, do 10 minutes of swings in the evening. And it's going to be better than doing nothing if you can't allocate a lot of time to that that day to train or whatnot. The hour is like it's ideal. It's nice for us to get in there. It's a good amount of time for us to coach with you and get through everything. But again, if it's not in the cards, and this is kind of like what Matt was saying, if something comes up and you can't make that training time that you like to train at, you just got to be able to adapt a little bit and get the most out of the day that you can.
I actually have a friend who realized, because she used to walk from like the train to work and stuff, and she was missing that. So she realized that she needed to like get more working out or steps in on her non-training days. So she 3 times a day for 10 minutes goes down onto the elliptical, and she has a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and they know it's like mom's elliptical time. And she literally like says to them, okay, like you're going to do, you know, snack time or something, and I'm going to go downstairs, and she just gets on there for 10 minutes. And then by the end of the day, it's 30 minutes. But I also think it's a chance for her to be by herself. So, but, so that could help. Everybody probably needs to get away with someone they're in the house with. So, yeah. All right. Next question, Joe. Got about 15 minutes left.
I'm not sure that we had other questions. Did I?
Wasn't there a question about what we like to eat before workout or something like that?
Oh yeah. What do the coaches prefer to eat before a workout? So we know Matt likes to eat a pound of beef.
Jay likes to chug his smoothie. What do you eat, Joe?
Like I said, I haven't actually done it that much lately, but I love peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So that's like, it's like a treat for me. And also, like Chris, you were saying, it's enough, you know, like it's not super heavy for me, gives me a little bit of energy. But I have a really tough time eating right before my workout. So, you know, I try to fit that in like either early morning before sessions, before I start training sessions, and then, or at least an hour out. And tons of water.
I'm someone who like conceptually thinks that, oh, I'll be fine if I don't eat before I work out, and then I get in the middle of my workout and I'm like ravenous. So I am also kind of on the peanut butter train a little bit, but I usually have to eat it with something else. So like I'll do like, when I used to train really early in the morning, which was terrible for me because I hated it, I would take apple and just literally put peanut butter on it and then walk to the gym because that was easy for me to do. Lately I've been eating, but I'm going to say that they have a lot of calories in them. But lately I've been doing like, they're called like peanut butter cups, and they're peanut butter, honey, oats, vanilla, and then they're topped with like just a little bit of chocolate. And they're like 250 calories though, but that's actually very easy for me to eat. So I've enjoyed eating those before. But yeah, it's usually something peanut butter realm. Kathy?
Because I am able to work out midday, I'm usually eating whatever my breakfast is, which is depending on my parents, depending on like whatever I have in my fridge, or if it's been a few hours since I've eaten in the morning, then my go-to is a Kind bar because I can buy it in bulk at Target. So that's my go-to, and it's like small enough where I can get a little bit and not feel like I'm full while I'm eating. So keep it simple.
I think that's actually a good point. Like you should keep something in your bag that if you like totally forget to eat, I don't understand people who forget to eat, but if you forget to eat, or if you don't have time to like get in something, then just have a protein bar or something in there that may help you get through that workout. I think that's always a good idea. Matt, when you're not eating a pound of beef, what do you eat pre-workout? You Neanderthal.
Kind of like we already said, usually just something that's very digestible. For me right now, I have usually some yogurt with like some fruit or something like that, maybe some honey. But it's going to depend on like, when I'm working out. Similar to like what you just said, if I know I'm not going to work out for a while, I might eat a little bit more food like that ground beef and rice. So that way halfway through my workout, I'm not starving. But if I'm like on the verge, right about to work out, it'll usually be something simple like some fruits and yogurt.
What I don't miss about the gym is the smell of everybody's food cooking in the microwave. I don't miss that.
Talking to you, Jay.
Talking to Jay.
I
Also,
knew I was going to get in some shit for that.
Matt about peppers.
I've been called what did you call me, Matt? I've been called something for microwave and broccoli, but
You're a terrorist.
No, it's more because, just so everybody knows, Jay will microwave broccoli in the very small room and then shut the door and leave our staff members in there with
either that or the whole gym smells of it.
Microwaved broccoli.
Go on. I'll tell you something that was well, weird today. I actually, for lunch, I was eating and I realized that I was post-workout and needed some food, but I didn't have any pre-made rice left and I was in between meetings and whatnot. So I ate 725 grams worth of broccoli today, which, let me tell you, is about this much broccoli. It was a lot. It was a lot of broccoli, but it's just mash it down there. But anyway,
like a turkey drum or something.
no, it was just a lot. Yeah, basically, it wasn't like a head of broccoli. Anyway, I actually don't always just drink my calories, right? It depends on the time of the day. Like if I'm going to train first thing in the morning, I'll have a shake because it's easily digestible. Again, if it's something where I'm like, I'm not going to train until 10 o'clock and I'm starting training at 6 a.m., then I'll have something that's a little bit more, that it's going to take me longer to digest and therefore encourage satiety for me. So from like, if it was just exactly pre-workout, I'm looking for about 200 to 300 calories with carbohydrates and protein. I don't deal well with fat inherently. Most people, like just as a generality, like if you, something like fat that's going to stick in your throat, stick in your stomach, and is going to be a little bit harder to break down is a general rule of thumb, is probably something to steer away from. We want something that's just easily digestible, easily absorbed into our bloodstream. And carbohydrates and protein are just easier to do that. But yeah, prior to that, as Matt said, if he realizes that he's not training for a long while, then having something that's a little bit more kind of fiber heavy potentially, or something that's going to satiate him for a little bit longer, let's call it slower release of calories throughout the day. And the same thing post workout as well. Like if I, my last meal at night is 8 to 8:30 or something, I'm looking to get something that's going to tie me over until 6 o'clock in the morning. That's the longest window that I'm going to go without eating. So the food that I might choose there, its properties are going to be different, right? I'm looking for something that's slightly slower release, something more satiating, something that takes longer for me to digest. If I was to eat that meal before I worked out, I'd be ill, right? Because it's just not serving the time of day as well. So it's the types of food might be similar, but it's or the macronutrients might be similar, but the types of food, are going to be different, and in what format you end up eating it is going to be different. So it depends on the time of day that you're training, I think, to me at least.
So I think those were our sent questions. So if people have other questions, we have about 10 minutes. We're happy to answer them if we can. So you can either type them into the chat box, or if you want to unmute yourself, there's enough of us that it won't. I don't think it'll cause a problem. Nothing?
Anybody? Anything?
Nothing obscure?
Got to be something.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hopefully you won't get background noise. So time of day for eating in the evening, right? So the one thing that Mr. Weedle has taught me is to eat for your activity after. So I've been watching the caloric intake that I've been doing, and I try and get most of my protein and heavy fats in the morning because I sit all day, and then I try and get my steps in. But then dinner time is usually anytime between like right now and I don't know, 6. So how would you recommend, like it changes day to day, right? So you have to pivot with your day. So lighter earlier, lighter later, heavier earlier, and I'm talking mostly protein and vegetables. I'm not talking like heavy duty fats like a pizza. If we're doing pizza, we're doing it early. But if we're doing like steak and vegetables and rice and stuff, we tend to do that a little bit. Like we can do that after we try to do that after 7, and it sounds so bad, but what are your thoughts on like your caloric intake for dinner time? Because if you think bedtime's like between 10 and 11, any recommendations?
I think we're going to pass that to Jay. But I'll tell you, I haven't eaten dinner yet, and I never eat dinner before 7. 7 is super early for me.
Yeah, right?
So, but Jay can answer it from a scientific standpoint, I believe.
Okay.
So in general, you want to try and eat for what you're about to do, not what you've just done, right? So if you're going to train first thing in the morning, you want to try and get some calories in your system for that. If you're going to train first thing in the morning, then, you've got the rest of the day ahead of you. You want to try and consume a few more calories earlier on in the day and a few less calories later on in the day, because your body just doesn't necessarily need it, right? use the calories that you're going to eat. If all things being equal, calories going to eat, you probably want to use them to fuel your activity, whether that's just being at work, being awake, dealing with kids, training at the gym, doesn't matter. All right. So that's one thing. Like, so that is the thing that we're talking about there is caloric density, right? So there's only so many calories I can get from a bag of broccoli, right? So if I'd have eaten, so let's say the goal for me is to get 200 calories of carbohydrates. I can get 200 calories of carbohydrates from X amount of rice, or I can get 200 calories from broccoli of X amount of broccoli, right? There's just a ton more density in that. So it depends on the types of food that on the type of food that I'm eating, not the macronutrient. So the macronutrient is what that thing is made up of. Broccoli is made up of carbohydrates, but there's just less total carbohydrates in broccoli than there are in rice. Broccoli, however, takes up a larger space within my system, just more total real estate. So I'm still getting carbohydrates in, but I'm probably eating less total calories because, are you okay, Dan?
Cold.
Jesus.
Keep going. It's cold.
Fiddler on the roof. Yeah, I'm probably getting less total calories in, but I'm still getting a large volume of food in, right? So it depends on what I'm choosing to eat. So like steak, pretty difficult to digest. Well, not difficult, but it's like, it's hard work for your body to digest it. So later on in the day, sure, go ahead. I wouldn't eat it right before you go to bed. Otherwise, you're going to be up in the middle of the night with a bit of a gut ache. But yes, I would say steak and veg is fine. You know, it depends on a comfort as well, but you could probably get away with it a little closer to bed. Now, if you're eating something that's really hard for you to eat, really hard for you to digest, then earlier on in the day is going to be better. But hopefully that makes sense in terms of eat for what you're about to do, not what you've just done. That doesn't mean that you have to eat a ton of food first thing in the morning. It just means that you have to choose foods that are more calorically dense. And then later on in the evening, if you're really hungry at night, but you don't want to eat a ton of calories at night, then you have to eat foods that are a little more calorically sparse. It just depends on what you want to choose to do that, right? So vegetables are very calorically sparse in comparison to fucking Pop-Tarts, or whatever the options are at the bottom. Does that make sense? So yeah, it's not, you know, 100 grams of rice and 100 grams of broccoli, although they're made of quote unquote the same thing, there's a lot less carbohydrates in it than that, or there's a lot less calories in that one thing, right? So it's trying to separate in our mind, not all calories are created equal. Not all, you know, 100 grams of X and 100 grams of Y doesn't mean that calories are the same measured in those two things, right? We look at things almost sometimes in terms of quantity or the amount of food on a plate. Well, that's not, we have to try and separate our brain from like that being the case. If that makes sense.
But I think to also ask a clarifying question, like, do you think though there's a difference between eating steak and broccoli at 6 o'clock than there is eating steak and broccoli at 8:30 at night?
From a performance standpoint or from a health standpoint?
That was kind of the question. Like, do you have, like, if you can't eat until 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night, should you change your meal based on that specifically?
I guess it depends on whether you're going to have some digestive issues later on or not. If no, then fine. Because the thing is, the calorie costs what it costs inside your body. If you eat it after 9 o'clock, it doesn't mean that it becomes a gremlin and costs, 100 times more of the calories. It is what it is. The biggest constraint to eating later on at night is it going to keep you up at night? Is it going to just disrupt your sleep? Even if you're not like up wide awake, is it just going to is it going to disrupt your sleep? Because if it is, we know, like, you don't have to feel it. You don't have to be awake for it. We know that foods that are harder to digest will disrupt sleep, period. Now, even if you eat the same food every night, you'll eventually get used to that, and that disruption will become your baseline. There's definitely more useful or more manageable foods to eat later at night, just as like there's more manageable foods to eat right before a training session. Hopefully that helps.
Any last second questions about anything nutrition, recovery, training related that we can answer, or obscure questions about like the giraffe behind Matt's head? No? All right. Well,
I actually was wondering about that, but I
well, the question is it a pre-created one, or is that a picture of yours? Like, do you own that picture, Matt? Like, is that from a travel of you and Maggie or something?
Dog.
What is it? It's your dog.
My neighbors.
He does live in the suburbs now, so the wild world of Canton, there are now giraffes.
Turtle last week. Don't get me started. Most of you know this.
I was going to tell you, Matt, that there was in Virginia, I think I randomly saw that there was a 65-pound dinosaur. It's like a specific type of snapping turtle that was found, and it was going to have to get sent back down to Florida because weird things like that come from Florida.
Just send everything weird back to Florida.
Pretty much.
Pretty much Amazon at this point.
Seems safest. Seems safest, yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. We hope we gave you some answers. It's good to see some faces. So enjoy this beautiful weekend that is coming on up. And hopefully we'll see you guys in the gyms soon, at least this summer at some point. So
And if you have any follow-up questions or something that kind of comes across and you want to email or DM one of us or text one of us or whatever, like by all means, obviously, absolutely do that, and we'll get to you, even if it means that we have to farm it out to somebody else. All right. Thanks very much for your time, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye, guys.
everybody.
Have a good night.